Roy Miller gets to the airport only to see that his flight has been delayed. To burn the time, he gets himself ice cream, plays video games, and goes looking at action figures when he spots a woman and begins scoping her out. The woman is June Miller, returning home to Boston after buying car parts. Roy follows her closely through the airport, then bumps into her, leaving an impression on her. June gets her luggage checked by a curious TSA agent, explaining that she repairs junk cars for a living. She hurries off when she again bumps into Roy once more. They get to the gate where June finds out she has been bumped to a later flight. Roy is able to pass through. He is being watched by CIA agent Fitzgerald, who reveals that Roy has blown up a lab and stolen a device called the Zephyr. CIA Director Isabel George wants him to retrieve it, and Fitz promises to get it back. He watches Roy bump into June on cameras and suspects they are working together. June is then informed that a seat has opened up on the flight for her. Roy sees her board and knows Fitz is up to something. The plane soon takes off, and surprisingly, it is very empty for being overbooked. But June is busy telling Roy about her sister April getting married on Friday to realize. Meanwhile, the few male passengers keep eyeing Roy dangerously. June starts telling Roy about her love for cars, which she got from her late father. She had started restoring a '66 GTO, which belonged to her father, which she plans to gift April as a wedding present. Her dream is to finish it and drive until she gets to Cape Horn, and Roy tells her it's beautiful down there. Roy tells her about his wish list to travel the world and kiss a stranger in France, and June seems intrigued. A sudden turbulence causes luggage to fall onto June, spilling her drink, and she excuses herself to the bathroom. Once she enters, Roy begins battling the men and the staff on the plane, who turn out to be CIA assets sent by Fitz. June is talking to herself about Roy, planning to fulfill one of his wishes of kissing a stranger, while outside, Roy is taking down the men. One of the stewards demands the Zephyr, but Roy disarms him and beats him down, demanding to know why Fitz put June on the plane. One of the pilots accidentally shoots the steward dead, but Roy shoots him, causing him to kill the second pilot. When June steps out of the bathroom, Roy has cleaned up the scene. June approaches and kisses him, but then she realizes the plane is descending. Roy calmly explains that he has shot both pilots, but June doesn't believe him and laughs in his face. Roy heads to the cockpit to land the plane, and June soon realizes that everyone around her is dead. She freaks out and rushes to the cockpit where she sees the two pilots dead and begins to freak out. Roy calmly gets her strapped in before bringing the plane down on a highway and finally coming to a stop in a field. Roy hands her a drink and tends to a gunshot wound. The drink is actually a drug to make her pass out, and while it takes effect, Roy explains that bad men will come looking for her, but she should say she doesn't know him. He adds that they will introduce themselves as federal agents, claim Roy is very dangerous, and tells her the words to listen out, for to know if the men will kill her. June passes out soon after and wakes in bed the next day. She thinks it's all a dream, until she sees a note from Roy and breakfast he prepared before leaving. On the TV, she sees a news report of the plane crash when there is a knock at the door. It is her firefighter ex-boyfriend Rodney, who came to check on her, knowing she was on the flight that crashed, but she acts oblivious to the news. June then heads out with Fitz watching her. At the fitting for April reveals she wants to sell their dad's GTO. A man alerts June to her car about to get a ticket, but when she goes out, she is surrounded by agents led by Fitz, who want her to get inside a car. Fitz introduces himself as FBI and shows her video of her and Roy at the airport and wants to know what they spoke about. He mentions the name Simon Feck, but June has no idea what he is talking about. She wants to talk with her lawyer, but Fitz plans to bring her to a secure location to keep her safe until Roy is captured. She is moved to another car asking their destination, but the men tell her they will keep her safe until the situation is stabilized, and June hears all the words Roy warned her about. Suddenly, gunshots begin to hit the cars in the convoy, and agents are killed, including June's driver. The agent beside her bails from the car, leaving June to steer the car. Roy then lands on the car's hood. He opens fire on another car, causing it to explode. Roy wants her to unlock the door, but June is focused on keeping the car on the road. Roy has a shootout with more men chasing them, but June opens the door, which gets ripped off, causing the men to crash. Roy takes the wheel, still firing on agents on the highway. The car is disabled, and Roy pulls June out to take cover. He finds 2 rifles in the trunk in time to kill 2 men pushing on him. Roy tells her to stay put before taking on the agents in a gun battle, but June takes off running for her life and jumps on a bus. She thinks she has gotten away until Roy pops back up, so she runs away to get away from him and heads to the fire station where Rodney works. The two go for lunch, where she confesses that she was in the plane crash and met this guy that killed everyone on board, but Rodney just thinks she is stressed. Roy then pulls up a chair, telling June they need to stick together. She is not keen on going with him, so Roy suddenly handcuffs her and pulls a gun, warning Rodney and everyone to stay put, or he will end them both before dragging June to his car. Rodney tries to stop him, and Roy is forced to shoot him in the leg before speeding away. He then explains that local cops will now believe she is his hostage, but June is angry he shot Rodney and demands he stop the car and let her out. She tells him she felt safer with the agents, so Roy pulls into a parking lot. He warns her that she won't survive long without him. He has to keep moving, as there is someone depending on him to carry through. Roy steals another car nearby, but she changes her mind and joins him. Later, on the news, she sees Rodney being hailed as a hero. The two hit the road, and Roy shows her the thing everyone is chasing, which appears to be a simple battery, but is actually the first perpetual energy source codenamed Zephyr. A device that small could power an entire submarine or a small city, and was created by Simon Feck, a kid barely out of high school. Roy was assigned to guard Feck at a lab along with Fitz, but found out Fitz was planning to sell Zephyr and kill Feck. Roy, however, saved Feck and the battery, and Fitz classified him as a rogue agent. The plan is to pick up Simon and return June in time for her sister's wedding, and he reassures her that he will protect her. The two get to a boathouse in Brooklyn where Roy hid Simon. While Roy looks around Simon's room, he sees a secret message Simon has left for him. Outside, June is playing with Roy's gun, aware mercenaries are closing in. Roy suddenly opens fire on the mercenaries and blows up Simon's room. He grabs 2 submachine guns, telling June to stay close before unloading on the men. He thinks the mercenaries belong to a Spanish arms dealer, Antonio Quintana, who also wants the battery. Roy wants June to stay put while he finds them a way out and leaves her a gun. He disappears for a while, but when he returns, he frightens June, who lets off shots, confusing even the mercenaries. Roy stops her and hands her a drink to counteract smoke grenades, but it's just to knock her out again before they are captured. While she slips in and out of consciousness, Roy escapes capture. They somehow end up jumping out of a smoking plane and sailing across the sea. When June comes to fully, she is laying in a hammock on a beach, and Roy has just caught them fish. He explains they are at his private off-grid location and will meet up with Simon soon. But June is pissed that he drugged her again and asks how she ended up in a bikini. Roy tries to explain that he did not peek, but June tries to punch him. She then grabs a shirt and runs off into the forest. She accidentally took Roy's phone and sees a motion alert at an address, and sees a man cleaning a car. She gets a call from April and tries to find a signal, only to realize they are on an island in the middle of the ocean. Antonio has tracked the phone call, and his men are on the way. June returns to the beach, where Roy has prepared lunch for them, but June wants to fight him. Roy grabs her but teaches her how to escape his grasp. The two then share a moment, and June wants to know who he really is, but a spy craft soon begins firing missiles at them, forcing them to run for cover. He's puzzled how they found him until June reveals she got a call. Roy unveils a small helicopter hidden on the island, and June begs to be drugged, so Roy squeezes a pressure point, knocking her out. She later wakes on a train in the Alps mountains. She gets to the dining car when a man comes up beside her. She thinks he is Simon Feck, telling him she is a friend of Roy. She then sees a note left by Roy that he is with Simon and excuses herself from the bar. Meanwhile, Roy is with Simon. Simon notes that the Zephyr is getting too hot and needs to be cooled down. June is trying to get away from the man. She gets to the kitchen, but the man kills the chef and grabs her, demanding to know where the battery is. June does her best to fight back until Roy enters the kitchen. He knows the assassin as Bernard, who has come for Simon. Bernard throws Roy around and grabs June, but she escapes from him, accidentally stabbing him with a knife. He pulls the knife out, but Roy kicks him out the window. Fitz and his agents board the train afterward when they see Roy looking at them from outside, but he soon disappears. The three get rooms at a hotel where June is looking forward to having dinner with Roy, but he has to go out for a meeting but promises to join her for dinner later. Roy heads out, but June secretly follows him through the streets. She sees Roy meet a woman and enter a restaurant together. The woman is Naomi, Antonio's henchwoman, and Roy is here to sell the Zephyr, telling Antonio through her earpiece that time is ticking. June leaves in shock and runs into Fitz and his agent. She is brought to meet Director Isabel but has a hard time believing anything anymore. Isabel tells her to look at the facts. Roy is the one selling the battery and has been lying to June all along. They show June video footage of the airport, where it's revealed that Roy used her to pass the Zephyr through security. She tells June to forget any life she fantasized about having with Roy, as he lies for a living. They want June's help, handing her a transmitter disguised as a pen to alert them when she knows Roy has the Zephyr. June returns to the hotel room before Roy, who soon returns with the Zephyr, which is growing hotter, and he drops it in ice. She confronts him for trying to sell the Zephyr and lying to her, but Roy ignores the questions. She presses the transmitter, explaining the CIA says they will protect him. Agents burst into the room, but Roy disappears with the Zephyr. They soon spot Roy running along the rooftops, with agents, cars, and helicopters chasing him. June is escorted out of the room and is brought to Isabel's car. Roy is jumping across rooftops, but the agents are slowly closing in around him. They corner Roy, who opens fire, but he gets shot and falls into the river. The agents secure Simon and plan to retrieve Roy's body and the Zephyr while June flies back home and attends April's wedding. Simon is being transported by Fitz and another agent, when Fitz shoots the agent dead and calls someone, planning to ship Simon to Spain. June is at her garage, where she has decided to keep the GTO. She then recalls the address she saw on Roy's phone, pulls up the location, and sets out in the GTO. She soon realizes she is being followed but manages to lose her tail. She gets to the address later that night, where an old man, Frank, and his wife Molly confront her, but she claims to have brought parts for his car. June is invited inside and learns the couple has been living there for 40 years, have won various lotteries, but have no idea who this Roy person is. June then sees photos of a young Roy, whom Molly calls Matthew, her son who died in the army. June apologizes and leaves. She then leaves a message on her own answering machine declaring that she has the Zephyr and wants to make a deal, giving her location. A few minutes later, she is surrounded by Antonio's men and kidnapped. She is brought to Spain, where she meets Antonio. She is injected with a truth serum and begins to feel its effects. She realizes that Roy made her follow him on purpose and overhear his conversation so she could turn him in and be able to go home. Antonio starts to get annoyed with her constant talking and demands the Zephyr, but June doesn't think Roy is dead. Outside on a roof, Roy turns up and sees Fitz arrive at Antonio's heavily guarded compound. June tells Antonio she lied about having the Zephyr as she was trying to find Roy and thinks he is not very far away. Antonio leaves her and goes to meet Fitz, and they plan to make the deal to hand over Simon at a nearby river. Roy has a tracker on Simon, who is actually inside Fitz's trunk. He prepares to move out when he spots June being escorted by men. Roy begins to pick off the men one by one before disarming the last man and giving him a message for Antonio that he has the battery and is coming for him before knocking the man out. He goes looking for Simon, with June hopped up on truth serum, telling Roy she feels excited and wants to make love to him, but Roy tells her to get hydrated. While bullets fly at Roy, a dazed June thinks he isn't happy to see her. Roy does what every woman expects and ignores the bullets and kisses June. The two then escape from the compound on a bike with men in cars chasing them. They are following Simon on the tracker, and Antonio is alerted that Roy Miller has the battery and is coming after him. Roy catches sight of Fitz's car, but they end up in the middle of a bull run with men still shooting at them. The chase leads through a stadium. Antonio catches sight of Roy and goes to shoot, but his car gets trampled. They catch up with Fitz and Simon, but Antonio's men are still firing at them, so Roy lets June fire on the chasing men. Others try to cut them off in front, but June shoots a car tire, causing a massive crash. Roy tells June she has some skills, and they speed up to Fitz, who is heading to meet a jet. Roy and June push ahead and get to an overpass. Fitz gets to the docks and drags Simon from the car. Roy launches himself over the overpass and sprints to cut off Fitz. Fitz pulls a gun, warning Roy to throw his guns in the water. Fitz demands the Zephyr for Simon's life, and despite Simon's pleas, he throws the Zephyr to Fitz. Simon lets it slip that he'll make another one. Roy runs to Simon as Fitz fires a shot. June sees Fitz take off in his jet and Simon kneeling over Roy, but it turns out Simon just fainted. He apologizes for messing up the battery, but Roy already knew the battery was unstable. As Fitz takes off, he feels the battery slowly getting hotter before it explodes over the sea. June comes over and realizes Roy is the one who is shot and sends Simon to get help. June holds him and he tells her she is beautiful. Roy wakes in the hospital with Director Isabel at his bedside. She explains that they gave Simon his own lab and June has moved on. Isabel uses coded words that alert Roy that they are planning to take him out. That night, Roy's nurse gives him his meds, but in and out of consciousness, Roy is broken out of his room, escapes in June's GTO, and feels the sun on his face. Once he fully wakes, he is sitting in the GTO on a beach. June returns to the car and wonders how he got into new clothes, but June promises that she didn't peek. The two then hit the road to Cape Horn, and Roy's parents also received tickets to Cape Horn.